Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So today we're going to be talking to Tyler Graham. He is going to give us the down low on frustration and parenting. He's an expert on helping dads succeed, but he's going to give us some parenting tips today to help us live our best life with our kids. With that, let's get to Tyler.
Hey, Bryce, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name's Tyler Graham. I am a dad of 6 kids that are 11 and all the way down to almost 4. I live in Greenville, South Carolina with my amazing wife, Bree. We just celebrated 13 years last week. So, yeah,
Congratulations. You guys
thank
got a
you.
lot to celebrate.
Yes, yeah, a lot of life in 13 years. It's on one hand, I can't believe it's only been 13 years, and on the other hand, it feels like I just can't remember anything different.
Yes.
So
Yeah. It feels
yeah,
like in a good way. Like
yeah, absolutely.
you're
Yes,
all
so
of your
good.
this time. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So we live on a small homestead here in Greenville, South Carolina, where we're at. So we've got some goats, chickens, ducks, bunnies, a pretty big garden out in our front yard. So
Nice.
we love to just really try to put our hands to the land that we're on here. We're on about 2 acres, and so we have dairy goats that we like to milk, and chickens for our eggs, and garden to grow all kinds of stuff. That's about time to harvest now, thankfully. So,
Yes.
yeah, it's fun. So, and then I work full time in healthcare technology, but on the side, I've started a business called 3 Mile Per Hour Fatherhood, and my goal there is to create content, resources, and coaching for dads to help them slow down and live intentionally,
Mm,
to be present with their kids. And my most recent offering is starting to venture into helping dads develop the skills of emotional regulation to keep their cool, because we all know with fatherhood and motherhood, parenting in general, there are plenty of moments that are going to test you and kind of take you to the
yes.
brink. And it's one of the things, just personally from my own fatherhood journey, that I've struggled with. I've struggled to kind of be the calm, steady dad that I've always dreamed of being,
Mhm.
and found that in these really tense moments that I was very quick to lose my cool and to speak harshly and to say and do things that I was regretting and having to come back and apologize for time and time again. And really went through a process of learning how to kind of rewire my brain and my default actions in those moments, and has really radically changed the way that I'm able to show up for my kids, for my wife,
Mhm.
within our house. And so really want to create resources for other dads to be able to do the same, that are struggling with that. It can
Yeah.
be easy to feel a lot of shame and guilt over that. Not a lot of people want to, admit and raise their hand that they're a dad that loses their cool, and want dads to know there's other people out there that are going through it too, and that there's like specific things you can do to improve in that area. So
Yeah. Love
yeah,
this. I mean,
yeah,
I can raise my hand and say I've
yeah,
lost people, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not something you're proud of, but I
yeah.
think it's just, there's moments where your humanness really shows.
Yes, yeah. Great way to say that.
Yeah. So that is a hard thing. And our kids bring out the best and worst in us, right? And
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
it's hard to come to the table where you are. I mean, I've never met a perfect parent. It doesn't exist. There's no
No, not at
reward,
all.
right? And trying to aim for perfection is
Yeah,
overwhelming, right?
yeah.
And not possible. And so it's like trying to be real with your kids.
Hmm.
Oh, that's hard,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yes, it
maybe
is.
the hardest job. I
Yeah.
sometimes I like going to work.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah.
okay.
I think there's so, and that's one of the things that we will probably get into this, but one of the things I think that often happens for dad, especially, I'll talk about it from a dad's perspective, just because that's my personal perspective,
Yeah.
obviously. But, I think what happens is dads feel that, and they sense the struggle. They are like I said, carrying around shame for being this dad that loses his cool with his kids. And so one of the ways they circumvent that is work, right? They become a workaholic because it's a lot easier to stay in the space where it feels like they have control,
Mhm.
and nobody's throwing a tantrum, or nobody's fighting one another. Nobody's
I don't know where you
refusing
work,
to
but
eat
I
their
hear
food.
that
Yeah.
can happen at work too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just different.
Yes, yeah, I should say there's some people who are dealing with that at work and at home. But right, it just becomes like an easier
Mhm.
thing. You just want to
Sure.
avoid the situations that cause you to move into spaces of dysregulation. And for many dads, that's work, right? That's the place
Yeah.
where they feel really comfortable. And so certainly something that, in the work that I'm doing with dads, want to help expose those things that we can kind of fall into as unhealthy regulation techniques. Workaholism would be one of those.
Mhm.
And what are ways that you can regulate in the moment, or proactively regulate, so that you can show up with your kids and not feel like you've got to avoid those situations altogether.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, talk to me. What does keeping your cool actually look like in the chaos of everyday parenting? And what are some tips or
Yeah.
tricks you have around that?
Yeah. So the best way that I know to describe it, and the way that I talk dads through this, is to use a spectrum of emotional regulation. And
Hmm.
so if you think about it on a scale from 1 to 10, we'll call it 4 to 7. Right in the middle is that green zone where you're regulated. That's where you're calm, you're steady, you're relaxed. Probably a sense of like just kind of a joyful presence about you. You can be present to the people around you when you're in that kind of middle state. And that's, again, it's where everybody wants to be, right? Like that's going to be where you are able to pay attention to what your kids are doing. You're able to engage with them and playing a game, or building Legos, or throwing the football in the backyard, whatever the thing is.
Hmm.
But what happens so often is we experience certain scenarios, and we'll talk about what these can be, because they're different for everybody, that cause you to move out of that state of regulation into what we would call dysregulation. And on one hand, so if we look at the lower end of the spectrum, we'll call it 1 to 3. That would be considered hypo arousal, and that's where you're numbed out. I call this the blue zone, right? You're kind of numbed out, you're disconnected. This could be the dad that comes home from a long day of work. He had a lot of meetings, maybe things didn't go well, and he just can't get excited to walk in the door. He comes in, maybe he just sits on the couch, wants to scroll his phone, and just kind of ignore what's going on around him. So that's one end of the dysregulation spectrum. The other side, so we'll call that 8 to 10 on the spectrum, is the red zone. That's hyper arousal. And this is where I'd say most dads who struggle with keeping their cool, or like yelling at their kids, this is where that comes from, is being in that range where you're very tense, maybe very angry. If you go to the extreme, you could consider it like rage. You're just like, oh, very overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And anybody who's listening, if this is something you struggle with, you can probably even feel it kind of creeping up now, even just hearing it. You know what that feels like when the kids just won't be quiet, or you're dealing with your fifth sibling conflict of the day, and you're just at the end of your rope and you just want to explode.
Hmm.
And like that's the, again, when you're in those modes of dysregulation, whether on the hypo or the hyper side, your body's greatest need is to regulate again and to get back to that green zone.
Hmm.
And so what happens is so many dads just fall into this kind of default where the quickest way for them to quiet the noise around them, especially around that hyper side, is to yell. That's the quickest way to get your kids to be quiet, to stop fighting, to get them to listen to you. And it's like we become overly dependent again on these unhealthy techniques, rather than having an understanding of what's happening in my body, what's happening around me that's causing this, and what actions can I take in a healthy way that aren't going to damage my connection with my kids or my spouse or the people around me, while also getting my body to a place of regulation, so I can respond from a place of presence, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah. So how do we, I mean, what does that look like? Like, how do you know what are healthy things that we could do that could help us get back to the green zone?
Yeah. So I think this is, and why I love this conversation, and why I love talking to dads about this is everybody is unique, right? Like
Sure.
everybody experiences this. Getting dysregulated is a normal thing. To your point earlier, nobody's perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect mom, perfect dad. And so to think that you're just going to exist your entire life in the green zone of regulation is a lie, right? Nobody, it's not possible. It's not a realistic expectation. The reality is we're all going to get dysregulated at some point. For some people, it takes a small amount of stimulation to move them into one or the other modes of dysregulation. For other people, they're steadier. It takes a lot to kind of knock them off balance. And you probably, as you're listening to this, you may be able to think of people like that in your life.
Hmm.
And so the to bring it back to your question is for every person it's going to be different. There's going to be different triggers, there's going to be different responses to those triggers. And the reason that I do this coaching with dads is because just the simple awareness of what those triggers are for you and the awareness of what your body's response is to those things can be a massive game changer, because
Hmm.
you're no longer just feeling this shame spiral of I lost my cool again. You're able to see, okay, there's like a physiological response happening here. I
Hmm.
can take an action to address that and to get myself to a place where I'm responding in the way that I want to, that I can use this as an opportunity to be the type of dad or to be the type of mom I want to be,
Hmm.
rather than just reacting. So we would call that like we want to respond to the moment, not react to it.
Yeah.
And so we can talk more certainly about what some of those techniques are. There's, I mean, for me, taking deep breaths, that's the quick one, right? If you've only got a few seconds, be able to take a couple deep breaths before you respond to a moment. For me, getting outside is a huge one. If I can just step outside, even just walk up and down the street for a couple of minutes, is a huge way that I regulate.
Hmm.
Uh, on both ends, right? So when you're in that 1 to 3 end of the spectrum, hypo arousal, your body's greatest need is to wake up. You need to like invigorate yourself. So that could be working out, doing something creative that you love, writing, journaling, playing music, drawing, painting, going for a walk, something like that.
Hmm.
On the hyper end, when you're in that 8 to 10 zone, you're feeling very angry, very overwhelmed. Your body's greatest need is to calm down, and so again, that could look the same for some guys. It's going and working out is a way that they do that. Going and taking a walk, taking deep breaths. You can grab an ice pack out of the freezer and hold it up against your chest to help kind of regulate your breathing. All kinds of things that you could do to regulate in those moments. And the most important thing is just finding what works for you in those moments, and knowing like when these situations come up that you've got these tools in your toolbox, so to speak, for how you can regulate in that moment, knowing what works for you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think everybody is different. So
Yeah.
giving a one size fits all, but breathing is a great one. I
Hmm.
love the ice pack. I tell people when they're having panic attacks to put an ice pack against their back of their neck, and it
Hmm.
actually creates this vasovagal reaction, which restricts
Yeah.
blood
Hmm.
flowing so quickly. And so then we don't get adrenaline everywhere. It doesn't sustain,
Hmm.
it like slows it down. I mean, so it's like in
Yeah.
those moments of raging, the
Hmm.
hyper aroused or the hypo
Yeah.
aroused, right? Like we sometimes need, even the cold could be like, whoa, wake up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it just kind of snaps you
Mm.
out of it. It's like the what they call it, like the bottom up response
Mhm.
in your brain, where it's like you can't logic or reason yourself out of it in the moment sometimes, when
Mhm.
you're, especially when you're on like the extreme ends of the spectrum. But doing something like really physiological, like breath work or ice pack on the chest or the neck, it can really help to like slow everything down and just help you to see more clearly kind of what you
Mhm.
need in that moment.
Be more present, like
Yeah.
actually being able to be in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you find are some of the most common emotional triggers for parents?
Yeah.
And then how do you suggest handling that without losing it?
Yeah. So I think I in the trainings that I do, I try to bucket those into like 4 different categories of types of triggers, because again, it's going to be unique to each person.
Sure.
So like the first one would be emotional baggage. So these the could be a lot of guys that I talked to, they grew up with a dad that yelled. That's all they did. And so they never had a model or learn the skills of emotional regulation in their youth. And so as they've become a father themselves, it's just their default, right? It feels almost in their DNA to some degree. Or maybe like you feel like you're failing as a parent. And so anytime something goes wrong, it might be a molehill, but you make it a mountain because you feel like you can't get it right. So it's like the first category, any kind of emotional baggage like that. The second one would be any kind of unmet needs. So feeling like stressed and overwhelmed by the responsibilities of life, right? You don't have what you need to kind of carry the weight of fatherhood or motherhood. And again, you're just kind of on edge because of that, or you're just not paying attention to yourself. You don't have enough margin in your life to slow down and sense what you need. And so you don't know that you're about to blow up until you blow up. You just move at such a pace that you can't pay attention to those things. The third category would be lack of support. So you feel very alone and again, kind of carrying things on your own. This could be, lacking close friendships. This could be navigating just tension in your marriage. Maybe things are tense there. And so it's causing you to be really on edge in these other places of your life. You feel like you're invisible, that nobody's like seeing the things that you're doing to provide for your family or to show up. You're doing the best you can, but it just never feels like enough. So that'd be the lack of support. And then the fourth one would be just those kind of reactive moments, right? So your kids are fighting or they're screaming at one another, or it's that kind of witching hour from 5 to 7 where everybody's hungry and tired and they're mad that dinner's not ready, or everybody knows what those are like. You're trying to get out the door and your kid can't find their shoes and it's been 15 minutes already, and you just kind of snap, right?
Yeah.
Those kind of reactive moments. So those are kind of the four ways that I bucket those out, and there's more examples within each of those that could be again personal to each person.
Sure.
And so in each of those moments, again, it's going to be up to you as an individual to really find, like, in these moments, what is it that I need to stay calm, to be cool in these moments? What are those techniques that work for me? Or like, what are the kind of systems or habits that I can implement proactively to try to avoid these situations? So that's another big thing that I work on with dads, is like preemptively identifying, like, what are these triggers? Like, you think about the analogy that I like to use is the check engine light on your dashboard of your car, right? Like when that check engine light comes on, it's telling you something's not right and you need to take a look at it. And typically when that light comes on, it's not a major issue yet, but if you ignore that light for too long, it's going to get worse. Something is going to break down and your car could stop or not turn on or anything like that. And so what I try to help dads with is identifying, what are those check engine lights? Like, what are those kind of early indicators that you're hitting this point where you're going to lose your cool, and take action then, instead of waiting until things are at a boiling point, right? So if you're like, going back to the spectrum picture, if you're like 7 on the edge of an 8, it's better to identify it there and take action than to get to a 10 and you're blowing up, yelling at everybody. And then you got to, have go on the apology tour. So being able to understand what those triggers are for you and what action you can take as soon as you identify that's happening, or to avoid those situations altogether. Example would be a work with a dad who anytime the house or his office was really cluttered, it just kind of put him on edge. He found that he was a lot more liable to kind of snap at his kids if things were cluttered and messy around him, which is a common thing for a lot of parents. And so for him, one of like the preemptive, proactive habits that he developed was making sure he was dedicating time daily to just tidying his office. He worked from home, and so when his kids would come in, it would kind of help him be more present with them. And so being able to find different things like that, I think, is what can help. When you stack those things up together, it can really create a set of habits or an environment where keeping your cool is a lot easier than if you're just like only reacting when it happens.
Yes. That makes so much sense because I think that's so hard of the things are going to keep happening. Our kids are still going to keep being kids.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
think sometimes I find that parents want to change how their kid is.
Hmm.
And the kid, that's not necessarily the problem. I mean, like sometimes there is, right? Like
Right.
it's, our kids aren't being respectful or
Mhm.
they're not following through with directions, but it's also like our reaction that's
Yeah.
making it such a
Hmm.
problem. And it's like if we're calm and our kid isn't getting their shoes on, it's like, okay, well, you obviously need help getting your shoes on, or like something's getting in the way,
Hmm.
so let
Yeah.
me help you be successful, because we want nothing more than our kids to
Yeah.
be successful. So it's like, but it's that part where it's us, like what
Hmm.
we're bringing to the table, unfortunately,
Yeah.
that is causing that thing to be, a 10 versus
Hmm.
it being,
Yes.
something that is that tiny little thing, like our kid not getting their shoes on. Like no one's going to die from that. You could
Yeah.
put the shoes in the car, right?
Hmm.
Like, and
Yes.
figure that out later, and maybe change the scenery
Hmm.
will
Yeah.
the kid to get their shoes on. But it's we get so fixated on what we want it to be like that
Hmm.
we sometimes forget that part about like kids are kids, and
Yes.
a lot of the things that they're doing are very developmentally appropriate.
Hmm.
They're very like they're okay, right? Like
Yeah.
what they're doing
Yeah.
is okay. But then we come in and we like level it up. And then they're
Yes.
like, oh, we're leveling this up. Okay, I can level up too.
Hmm.
Right. And then
Yeah.
we're in this tit for tat thing, and it's problematic because now you're like, how do we get back on course? Right. And we're like,
Hmm.
we're in the mud, right? Like it's bad.
Yeah.
So then we got to figure out how to get it back. And that can be
Hmm.
so hard. And something I think that contributes to that too is there's so much demand on parents, often working, right? And not having a lot of time for themselves. So trying to pour from an empty cup, I say,
Hmm.
is a really hard thing. And I think it's sometimes we don't feel, do you find that dads struggle with like taking care of themselves too? Like giving
Hmm.
themselves time? I think moms definitely do.
Yeah.
Dads do too.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in the guys that I've worked with, and so many dads that I talk to carry this kind of unspoken sense that like they can't be okay until everybody else around them is
Mm,
okay, and I'm sure that's probably a common feeling in moms as well. And so there's this sense that I got to make sure everybody else is good. I got to tend to everybody else's needs, and then if there's time left over, then I'll take care of my own.
mhm,
And what happens for most people because of like our this kind of current cultural moment where everybody lives at such an unsustainable pace. That's again the soapbox that I'll stand on till the day that I die. I think with my message of 3 mile per hour is that like being able to slow down and to eliminate the things from our life that aren't serving the vision that we have for who we want to be and who we want our family to be creates the space that we need to breathe and to like recenter, to
mhm,
have space in our day to regulate,
mhm,
and to do the things proactively to take care of ourselves, to really be uh, healthy in the way that we need to be for our kids and for our marriage, for our job, for our friends, for our community, whatever your thing is. And so I think being able to identify like what are those rhythms that I need to put in my life as non-negotiables to
mhm,
ensure that I'm showing up in a healthy way on a day-to-day basis, those things are worth fighting for. So like
mhm.
I'm not advocating for dads to like go play 8 rounds of golf a week and just spend a ton of time away from their family or responsibility. But like, my thing, I love going to sit in a coffee shop. Like I love drinking good coffee. I love the vibe of a coffee shop. So
Yeah.
it could be taking my laptop and just working on 3 mile per hour stuff because it's creative and it's restful to me. It
Mhm.
could be just reading a book, journaling, just anything there, like for an hour or two. And so that's like a rhythm that I have every weekend, Saturday or Sunday. I try to go sit at my favorite coffee shop and just relax. And that's just an important rhythm for me to have. And
Mhm.
we do the same thing with my wife. We find what does she need on a regular basis to be at her best. And like, let's really fight to protect that.
Mhm.
And when we can establish those as very foundational rhythms in our life that other things don't supersede, or, you know, I think for many people, they try to set those up, but then it becomes the first thing to get axed when they get, you know, invited to a kid's birthday party, or, oh, the lawn needs mowed. And so I guess I can't go to, you know, have my coffee shop time this week. So being able to figure out what those are, and then fight for them is so important for parents.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's hard because I don't know, I'm sure this is the way where you live too, is just like there's a lot of pressure to do all the things.
Yeah.
Like all of them,
Yeah.
right? So your kid needs to be in every sport
hmm
and be, the best at all the sports and,
Yeah. Yeah.
practicing all this stuff. And it's like, oh my gosh, like we don't,
hmm
there's not enough time.
hmm
And also, like, I think I don't know what the statistics are on your kid actually becoming a professional athlete, but it is
Yeah.
new, right?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Unlikely.
yes, but I mean, physical activity is important. So it's like I want to
hmm
support that, but then there's also things that aren't physical activity. There's also music, but then there's like,
hmm
is your kid going to be a famous piano player? I mean, probably not, but it's like the
Yep.
balance, right? So I think our kids are watching us too to
hmm
see how we model how to use our time, right? And then they're
Yeah.
going to live their life doing what we did.
hmm
So they're looking at us. If dad works all the time, then that's what we must do to be successful
hmm
is to work all the time. And so then I'm going to model my life after that. So I think
hmm
and it's hard because like, I have in my 4 kids, I have kids who are very athletic and then ones who aren't as athletic or not as interested in athletics. And it's balancing those things of like, I don't want to overindulge the kids who are super athletic because they do want to do all the things,
hmm
but you know, sometimes being home and having calm time and doing things as a family is also as valuable as the things that we can teach in those sports, which I think are also important, or music
hmm
lessons, or learning another language, or whatever it is that your kid's into.
Right. hmm
And so it's like being able to say no is such a
hmm
hard thing, and being able to accept no.
Yeah.
I struggle with that one.
Yeah. Yes.
Right, when my husband's like, "No, let's not do that." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "What? No, we have to. Like, this is the thing." And
hmm
and he's like, let's just have some downtime, right?"
hmm
And as somebody with ADHD, I like going. Like, that
hmm
is like go, go, go. And I didn't really learn how to not go, go, go until I met my husband. So that has
hmm
only been for
Yeah.
that period of time. And so I'm still perfecting that. But I think a lot of us don't, like, our society doesn't really celebrate doing things quietly
hmm
with your family or like
Yeah.
at home. It's not something where they're like, wow, good job. And not that we need a good
hmm
job for everything, but I mean,
Yeah.
you see that too, where it's like the things that are
Yeah.
celebrated is like you take your kids to all the things and do all the stuff
hmm
and attend all the parties and on and on.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you said, I think culturally right now, the norm is to live life at this like breakneck speed, especially if you have a lot of kids, because you're just chauffeuring them from thing to thing. You're saying yes to every birthday invitation, yes to every athletic event, every, after school activity. And I'm not an expert in this area, or in sociology or anything like that, but I have to think that like social media contributes to that some, because like nobody's posting like these highlight moments of sitting around reading a book with your kids. It's like those aren't the things that make the highlight reel, but they're the things that are so often needed to live in a healthy way, right?
Mhm.
So I think being able to, and to me, it all starts with like your vision for your family and who you want to be. Knowing, like, when I close my eyes and I imagine my life at 80 years old, and let's say I'm on my deathbed and I'm surrounded by all my family, like, what are the things I want them to say about me? What are the things I want them to feel being around me? What I want it to look like? And like, I don't want it to look back and think, man, I just sped through all of this. Like, I want to be able to say that I've taken the time to like enjoy this family. Like, because family's incredible. I love just getting to sit around and listen to an audiobook with my kids. We're going through the Harry Potter series right now. We've got like 5 chapters left in the 7th book. Everybody's like
Oh my
itching to
goodness.
finish it right now, which is super fun. Or to
Yes.
play a game or do a puzzle. Just like those are the moments that I look back on, even now, still being in the midst of a lot of it, being able to look back at those moments and say, "Man, this is really, really good."
Mhm.
Um, and like you said, I want my kids to play sports. I want them to have opportunities to learn instruments, to press into these things, because I do think there's a lot of value there. But I don't want that to dominate my life. I don't want that to dominate the life of our family. And because we have this crystal clear vision of who we want to be, it makes it really easy, or at least a lot easier, to say no to opportunities that come up that we just know don't serve our vision. Like, it doesn't move us closer to who we want to be. And so like we can just politely decline those things and
Mhm.
focus like where we really want to, the things that matter the most.
Okay, so question, what's something
Yeah.
that you've recently declined that because it didn't align with your family's vision?
Yeah. So we have my parents keep a camper down at the beach, and invited us to go and stay with them at the beach, coming up here in about a month, and end of July. And my kids love going. I love going. My wife loves going. It's just like, I mean, it's a free beach trip. We're right on the beach. They've got a water park, all kinds of fun things. It's
Mhm.
it's an absolute blast. We've done it for several summers in a row. But as we got that invitation this year, we were looking at our calendar, and we already have some things scheduled around there. My wife's got a girls' weekend away. I've got a work trip. Kids have like a VBS camp the week before, and it was one of those. I just kept trying to fit it in. I'm like, how can I finagle this to fit this in perfectly, because I really want to do it. And it just got to the point where I took a step back and looked at it. I was like, this is not going to serve our family. Like, this
Mhm.
is not going to be a thing that I'm gonna look back on and say, I'm really glad I fit this into an already full schedule, an already full season of our life. And so, as hard as it is in those moments to turn down a really fun opportunity, something that I really want to do, I
Mhm.
know that looking at that and saying not this year is the right move. And so that's, one of probably many examples I could give, sports being another one, where we've been very intentional about how we sign our kids up for sports. We're lucky enough to have a league that's a mile from our house for baseball, football, soccer, all of that. And so it'd be really easy to say, yeah, we can sign up for that. We can sign up all of our kids, and they're all different ages, so they're all in different leagues and different teams, and we've got practice every night of the week. But we've really intentionally said no to that, and so we space it out, and every kid kind of gets a season to step into something and try something new, and some of that will stick, some of it won't. We said no to it for a lot of years when we had really young kids,
Mhm.
and really just started stepping into more of that in the past probably 2 years, as our youngest has aged into a point where she's not napping, and we just have more flexibility. So I think it's just really important to, in my answer with this, is for anybody listening to discern your season, would be like my encouragement of like, there may be a season where pressing into more things is good and right.
Mhm.
Like I said, I think my family's kind of entering into that and learning how to do more in a healthy way. But that followed a season where we really just needed to hunker down, and like we said no to a lot. We had very little on our calendar because that's just what that season demanded.
Yep.
Navigating some like tricky stuff with our kids' behavioral issues that they were having a lot of young kids, having a newborn, different things like that. So being able to discern your season, know what you need, and then constantly just coming back and reassessing and saying, hey, is
Mhm.
now the right time to step into more? Do we need to pull back from more? And being okay either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the definition of seasons because I think oftentimes we think it's forever, and
Mhm.
season really helps us
Yeah.
to identify this as short. And some seasons are longer, some seasons are shorter, right?
Yeah.
But just recognizing that like this will pass or this will change,
Mhm.
and being flexible with that. And I think also letting our kids dictate what they really would like to do too, to a certain
Yeah.
extent. Like this last year, we signed up my youngest, who's 3, for soccer, because he really wanted to play soccer. Then we got there. It was a terrible fit. It just like, I
Mhm.
mean, maybe soccer will be better later,
Yeah.
but my husband and I were like, hey, we're going to take a couple years off soccer
Yeah.
because it was just too anxiety
Mhm.
provoking for him. And I'm not one to like avoid anxiety. And like sometimes we have to press into that, but I'm like, this isn't the time. Like we'll
Mhm.
master that skill later.
Yeah.
And saying like it's okay that there's going to be other people who have kids that have played every season for their entire lives, and that's going to be the way it is if that makes sense for their family, but it
Mhm.
doesn't make sense for us and our family
Yes.
or this way.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you sum that up so well. Like assessing what is good and right for your family, knowing that it's going to be different from other people, and like choosing to intentionally pursue that path. Like don't do things by default just because it seems like everybody else around you is
Mhm.
doing those things. Like find the right thing for your family in this season for your family, and like be okay that it looks different.
Yeah. I mean, and really, because the more you do that, more people are modeling that, the more
Hmm.
other families are going to do that. Like, they're going to be
Yeah.
like, wow, you're doing this differently. Like, tell me about
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Because they seem calmer. You're going to say, like, the thing that really changed the trajectory of my family was when we started being intentional about how we're spending our time, what we're saying yes
Hmm.
and no to, what our vision is for our family. Like, that changed for me. And then they're going to want that too.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It definitely gives you the opportunity to like be more comfortable in doing what you're doing. Like you
Hmm.
know that your yeses mean something, and it like gives permission to people around you to do the same thing. Like when they see like, oh, I can choose a different path. I don't just have to say yes
Hmm.
to everything.
Yes.
It can be really eye opening for people,
Hmm.
and so it's been fun to get to have a lot of those conversations with people around us or the dads I'm working with to give them just the permission, the freedom. Like
Yes.
you can say no to stuff, and like
Hmm.
nobody's. You might make somebody mad. The chances are unlikely. Like everybody's probably gonna be fine with it. So just
Hmm.
like do what's best for your family
Yeah.
and feel good about it.
And even if it's the last minute, I mean, there are times where we've had days where our kids were supposed to go to dinner with somebody or whatever, and it has like gone really poorly, right? And we're
Yeah.
like, this is not going to be the day where we can do this. And
Yeah.
just saying like, hey, I'm so sorry, but things are not working out like that. And you
Mhm.
know what? We have been met with such kindness about
Yeah.
that. And then I noticed that when we do that, I mean, thankfully it doesn't happen all that often, but with the
Yeah.
families that we've had those experiences, they also too have been like, hey, I know we have plans tomorrow, but it's just
Mhm.
not going to fit in the schedule. Or we've
Yeah.
had some really rough behavior, like up too late last night, need to
Mhm.
reschedule. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yes, everybody's taking care of themselves, which makes everybody feel better. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's disappointing. Sure.
Yeah.
Disappointed. Yeah. Get it back on the calendar. But
Mhm.
also just like people understanding that and knowing that there's freedom to do that within your relationship, so important.
Mhm.
Because I bet your parents are going to invite you to the beach next summer.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, you're out, dude.
Yeah,
We're done
exactly,
with you.
right?
Yeah.
It's like easy to just inflate it in our head. And I'm
Mhm.
especially prone to this, just the way that I'm wired in my personality is to assume that it's always gonna offend somebody or hurt their feelings when the reality is like everybody's navigating this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody who is a parent of young kids knows what it's like for your kids to have a bad night's sleep and to just be in a terrible mood the next day and
Mhm.
not at all fit for dinner out somewhere.
Yeah.
And like being able to admit that and to like make those decisions that are going to be best for your family, that are going to set you up to be successful the next day or the for the rest of the week,
Yes.
like those always pay off in my opinion.
Yes, totally. Yes, even with the cost. I mean, there's always a cost to everything.
Hmm.
Literally everything, there's a cost, but so often the benefit outweighs any cost that's
Hmm.
associated with that.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely.
Okay, so something that I think parents struggle with often, and I hear lots of questions about too, is like, okay, I've had a long day. I'm stressed. My patience is
Hmm.
low. How do
Hmm.
we stay what ideas do you have? Like in terms of, is it things to transition to the house? Is it like what
Hmm.
things do you have to say to get from the stressful thing that you're in to
Hmm.
a joyful experience with your kids?
Yeah. So I think we can probably I think this ties in really well with the conversation we were just having, is that I feel like so often there is this pressure, and whether that again comes from like the highlight reels of social media, and we think there's these kind of unspoken expectations on us as parents to do certain things or to show up in certain ways, or maybe just unrealistic expectations that we put on ourselves of,
Mhm.
we always kind of dreamed that we would be this type of parent or we would do this type of thing, can cause us to put so much pressure on certain situations to look a certain way. And to an example maybe that's going to be clearer than me just talking about it would be like bedtime. So bedtime is one of those moments that probably from, I would venture to guess, for many parents
Mhm.
can be a very stressful point in the day, right? You're tired and exhausted from a long day. Your
Mhm.
kids are tired and exhausted, or maybe they're not, and that's the problem. While you're trying to get them to lay down,
Yes.
and like there can almost feel like there's this pressure for bedtime routines to be this elaborate thing. There's several dads that I've talked to of, they're like, "Oh, I want to read a book," or we do bath time and then we do a story and then we play for a few minutes and then I lay in bed. And and then when the kid starts acting crazy, they get really tense and angry, and then bedtimes becomes like full of tears because dad just snapped and yelled,
Mhm.
because he's just done, right? He's just cooked for the day. And that's where I found myself, was like, man, bedtime is like my least favorite time of the day
Mhm.
because it just keeps happening. And so, like, what we did is we shortened our bedtime to a very simple routine. I We don't read books. I don't do individual bedtimes with every kid. Maybe a season will come where I will. But
Mhm.
right now, like, we do a family bedtime. Like, we kind of break. Everybody's in the kitchen or living room. We say it's time for bed. I say a blessing and a prayer over my kids every night before they go to bed. That's like the thing that is our rhythm now. And so I say that for everybody while they're standing there with me. And then like we send them off to their bedroom. And for like our youngest, our 3-year-old, we'll go tuck her in, or, I will walk downstairs sometimes. All of our kids' rooms are down there. And so I'll go and at least like say goodnight or something like that. But it's quick, like,
Mhm.
and it's not rushed, but it's quick. And I think there's a distinction there. But that's what I've just found is needed for us by that point in the day. With 6 kids, like, I just do not have it in me to do these elaborate bedtime routines with every kid.
Mhm.
And I don't think I'll look back on this and be like, man, I really wish I would have just had more extensive bedtime routines, because I'm going to look back and say I really maintained healthy connection with my kids in those moments. I still have that with the blessing that I say, with the prayer. Like, if I don't
Mhm.
do it, my kids are like, "Hey, we need our blessing," and so it's like they remind me of that, and it just becomes this like streamlined process where we're eliminating these moments where I can be really prone to snapping, where everybody's just kind of prone to being, not at their best, and so whatever your thing is, I would say, whether it's transitioning from the house to getting in the car to going somewhere, if it's school in the morning or anywhere else, or if it's during dinner time, like, find a system that works that allows you to like get through that in the way that's like most seamless for you.
Mhm.
Um, don't feel like it's got to have a ton of pressure on it or it has to look a certain way. Again, like we said, find what's best for you in this season of life for your family, and implement it so that it works for you. Tweak it, adjust it, assess it. As your kids get older or seasons change, like, revisit it and decide, is this still serving us? Do we need to shift this? Do I need to do a longer bedtime now with my kids? Those are the types of things, like, you have the total freedom to do all of that
Sure.
anytime you want. And so that's really what's worked for us and in our family.
Yeah. Well, and I think about like also talking to the kids about when changes are going to happen. Like, hey,
Mhm.
this isn't going well, right?
Yeah.
Like this thing that bedtime is really hard,
Hmm.
right? There's lots of tears. I'm
Yep.
getting upset. Like
Hmm.
this is not going well. We're going to change something. Like, what
Yes.
do you imagine this looking like? Here's what I imagine. Can we come to an agreement, or
Hmm.
is there something that we can do that like makes this a positive experience? so
Mhm.
that we're all enjoying that. And so, your kids might say like, "Oh, I want you to come to my room and say goodnight, but
Mhm.
you don't have to read a story to each of you." Or you said you're
Yeah.
doing family stories on Audible or an
Mhm.
audiobook or whatever.
Yep.
And so it's like you can create those times because I think
Yes. Mhm.
oftentimes we're worried we don't want to miss the like face-to-face time with our kid. Like we want to hear
Mhm.
about their day. We want to know what
Mhm.
happened. We want to know are there problems or what's going to happen tomorrow. But I think we forget that we can incorporate it at different times.
Yeah,
It doesn't always
absolutely.
have to be bedtime. And so it doesn't mean you can't do the things you want to do with
Mhm.
your kid. It just may not look exactly the way you imagined it. Or it's just like it can't because it's not looking like that.
Yeah.
Right. If you're like losing your marbles and
Mhm.
snapping at them, it's not looking like the bedtime you
Yeah,
imagined.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And again, that's like I share that knowing that's what works for me. But I
Yeah.
also work from home and my kids are homeschooled. And so when it hits 5 o'clock, I shut my computer and I walk outside of my door and I'm with my kids.
Yeah.
And I know that's not the case for every parent, right? They may have a long commute or their hours are different. And so bedtime may be the only time where they do that and they want that extended thing. It works for them. It's what they
Mhm.
need. It's again just like coming back to what do you want your life to look like? How
Yes.
can you make that happen in a way that's healthiest for you and for your kids?
Mhm.
To your point, we try to be very intentional about our family meals and having those conversations about your day, listening to the books, playing the games, doing the things so that when bedtime comes, I'm like, I've made my deposits in each of my kids. Like I've like invested in each of those
Yeah.
relationships.
Yeah.
I don't need to do an extended bedtime.
Mhm.
I'm gonna
Mhm.
say your blessing. I'm gonna tell you good night and that I love you, and then I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah. Totally. Well, and I think, the other thing, I mean, it would be ideal if we got everything done on every day, but
Mhm.
that never happens to me.
Yeah.
Like I literally have carryover items
Mhm.
like from last week,
Yep.
right? That I'm
Yep.
still trying to get done. And not that that's like ideal, but it's that as long as we're meeting the mark, right? Whatever it is for your kid and
Mhm.
every kid, even within the same household, I bet your 6 kids are different humans. Each one of them
Oh,
is
yeah.
their own unique
Yep.
selves. And so, I mean, my parenting strategies for one parent or kid does not necessarily
Yes,
like copy
100%.
paste to the other one. And so, some of my kids need more things at different times during the day. And also I think something that has been important in our family is to talk about how things are not fair.
Mhm. Yes. Huge one.
Right.
Yep.
So I think we have, at least I do, a very like I I like things to be fair. I want
Yeah.
fairness, right? Like I want it to feel equal. I want everybody to just have the same. But like that doesn't always make sense. And
Mhm.
fair is about really about everybody getting what they need to succeed at that time. And so
Mhm.
that might mean I'm pouring into one kid earlier in the day and the bedtime is a different thing for
Yeah.
a different kid. And so recognizing, I mean, this parenting job, no one tells you what
Yeah.
you're going to do.
Exactly.
Like, let's
Yes.
be clear that like they were like, it will be fun. You
Yeah.
got married, have a kid, right? And they
Mhm.
didn't tell you about all the nuances of all the
Yes.
things, right? So I
100%.
think you're gonna work through it. And something I say at my house too a lot of times is I'm just one mommy or I'm still figuring it out, right? Like you
Mhm.
don't have to have it all figured out. Like I am literally a child therapist. I know the
Yeah.
things that kids need and I don't have it all figured out. Like I'm
Yeah.
still figuring it out because each kid is different, each season is different, right? Like
Mhm.
we're evolving. And by the time I have it all figured out, they're all going to be grown,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah. By the time you find the thing that works, then it's
Yes.
like they've grown older and now you gotta figure out something else.
Yes,
Exactly.
exactly, right? So
Yeah.
it's gonna be all of like so it's an evolution, right? To just
Mhm.
like not view this as anything stagnant, right? Like it is,
Mhm.
and at least in our jobs for the most part, like it stays pretty consistent. Like that
Mhm.
part can be nice of like here are
Mhm.
your responsibilities. Like we're
Mhm.
gonna do that, we're gonna implement a new system or whatever. Like things do change, but like your job description is pretty much the same.
Mhm.
And but in parenting, that's not, I mean, you're so many things and all things and right. And so it's
Yeah.
so hard. And so I think bringing your kids in too to say like, hey, how does this feel? We tried that new thing. How do you feel? Right. And
Mhm.
it could be that it's not every day that you go into their room and have these big conversations. And, it's like checking if they need something. Right. And it's
Mhm.
like, if it's not that day, then, maybe it's every other day, or you spend a lot of time on the weekends doing stuff, taking walks or whatever it is to
Yeah.
fill your kid's bucket that it doesn't have to. I mean, ideally, we're fulfilling them in some way on most days, but
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be that you're like pouring everything into
Yeah.
them every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that you have mentioned a couple of times now that I think is so, so good is talking to your kids about this stuff. Like, I think it's so easy to just make the decisions and
Mhm.
implement them, or do a certain thing and just assume that your kid should be along for the ride because you're the parent, they're the kid, they just need to like get in line. Having those conversations with your kids, whether it's helping them to understand, like, hey, this is why we're not playing soccer this season.
Mhm.
This is why we have to say no to this. Or,
Mhm.
hey, this is why we're saying yes to, for us, it was all three boys playing basketball, and having that conversation with my daughter, my oldest, to say, hey, this is going to be a lot, but here's why we think we need to say yes to this right now.
Mhm.
Or even to your point of like helping your kids see where you are on like that emotional regulation spectrum. I like we say that very similar things like mommy and daddy are not robots. Like we are one person. We
Mhm.
cannot hear all of you at once. We cannot do everything. We don't work for
Mhm.
you. Or like, hey guys, daddy's just had a really long day. I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed. Bedtime is going to be quick tonight, and I need y'all to stay in your bed because I need time to rest and recharge.
Yeah,
They don't always get it. They don't always listen. But
sure.
being able to like to
Mhm.
communicate those things to your kids, one gives them like a perspective for some of these things, for emotional regulation, for like what it means to be a human. And then
Mhm.
two, it helps them to like understand more of the why and what you're doing as a family. Not that just you're trying to make decisions to like purposely spite them, which is how it feels to them sometimes, I think.
Mhm.
But you're like making decisions that you think are best for your family. It may not be fair. It may not be what they wanted. It may be disappointing to them. All of
Mhm.
those things are okay. But this is the decision that we're going to make, and here's why. And being able to explain that, like the
Mhm.
way you've talked about doing that with your kids is incredible, and absolutely think that needs to be like part of what you're doing as a parent.
Yeah, well, and it's something we didn't really get taught, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think I grew up in a time where my parents just made the decisions. Like, you could
Mhm.
ask for what you wanted, but, like, you just got
Yeah.
what you got and you didn't throw a fit about
Yeah.
it, right? Like, and so I think but that's not necessarily great either. I mean, like,
Mhm.
we all need to have a voice, and even if the voice isn't, like, the consensus of, like, what we end up doing, it's
Right.
to say, like, "Okay, so you're really wanting this. Like, I hear you."
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I think one of the things I think kids really want is to just be heard, right?
Mm.
Even if it doesn't mean that
Yes.
we
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
anything with it, we just heard them say what they wanted to say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it gives us insight and like perspective into our kids, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, every kid is different. I have my almost 10-year-old son who any thought that comes into his head is coming out of his mouth. He's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking,
Mhm.
what he's feeling all the time. But for my daughter, my oldest, my 11-year-old, she is much more reserved. And it's only through engaging her in some of these conversations or explaining things to her that I can really kind of pull out what's going on in her heart or in her mind to
Mhm.
understand like, oh, okay, you're really disappointed because you've been looking forward to this thing that I've decided that we're
Mhm.
not going to do. And we can hash through that. Maybe it'll influence the decision and we
Yeah.
can try to change things. Maybe it won't, but at
Mhm.
least I can like speak into that with her and kind of meet her where she's at instead of just assuming she's just being ungrateful or something like that.
Mhm.
Something
Yes,
like that.
okay, that's good because I wanted to talk to you about kids pushing back or
Yeah.
pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
I think often we take it very personally as
Hmm.
parents, right? Like, as, like, they're not being respectful or they
Yeah.
don't appreciate things. Like,
Yep.
how do you handle that, or what is your advice, or how do you think responding can go well there?
Yeah. So I think a couple of different things. One, I think there is some degree of like healthy boundary pushing that happens in kids,
Mhm.
and you are much more of an expert on that than me and can speak to that. But from just my experience with my kids, is like they are learning what it means to be human. Like my
Mhm.
wife and I say that all the time. Like our kids are learning what it means to be a human, and like that requires like just testing boundaries and
Yeah.
pushing things and trying like I see especially in my boys where like they just want to see like what they're capable of, and they're gonna like lift each other up and wrestle and fight and, go explore in the woods or at the creek across the street, because they want to feel like they're taking new ground. Or
Mhm.
like my daughter, she'll just want to like try new things. She wants to sing, and she wants to like try to learn how to use her voice in that way so that it sounds a certain way for people that listen to her sing. And so like there's these moments where our kids are pushing these boundaries, not out of a place of like being disrespectful or disobedient, but they're just trying to find their footing. They're trying to find out who they are, what they're made of, what they're capable of. And I think being able to see that and recognize that and champion that is an important thing for parents to be able to like create space for our kids to have those moments.
Mhm.
Because if not, like they're just not going to know what they've got. They're not going to know that they have what it takes when they encounter difficult things in the world or in their life.
Mhm.
And so I want my kids to be able to push boundaries in that way. Where it starts to cross a line is when there is like a direct disobedience or disrespect in that. So if I tell my kids like, please, like, do not cross the street, and they go and cross it, like that's a different thing. That's not pushing a boundary. Like that's blatantly disregarding like something that I've said. And so or like one of my sons is he can like kind of buck up in moments of like correction. If we're trying to help him see where he's made a mistake or where he's done something wrong, he's very quick to kind of bow up and defend his actions.
Mhm.
And in doing that, he can speak very disrespectfully. And so those are the moments previously, and even now, where I can be most prone to losing my cool. It like, especially when he hits one of his younger siblings, or when he speaks to my wife a certain way. It's like those are the things that can like take me to a 10 immediately.
Mhm.
And so being able to like separate myself in that moment, being able to separate like um, what would be like being able to understand that him being disrespectful in that moment isn't necessarily a reflection of my fatherhood. I think we
Mhm.
can often feel that where like our kids' reaction is a response on us. And so it spins up additional feelings of shame or failure, which just contributes to like the anger in the moment
Yes.
or the dysregulation.
Mhm.
And so being able to like see that they're having a hard moment, being able to separate yourself from their hard moment and regulate yourself, whether that's through breath work or, stepping away for a few minutes, again, having the conversation with your kid, like, hey, I tell my son that all the time. Like, I cannot address this right this second with you. Like, I'm feeling too angry. I need to go step away for a minute. Please don't move. I'll be right back. Like, in the moment, understanding that like you have the freedom and the ability to control how you respond, not necessarily how they act, like you were saying before, is critical. And again, having the margin in your life to be able to do that, not to feel like you're in such a rush that you don't have time to go regulate before you address that moment, is another huge piece of that. So I could talk about this for a long time because it's very personal to me, and I think an area that many dads really struggle with. But being able to, I, to summarize all of that again, I think being able to keep yourself separate from from your kid's own dysregulation in the moment, controlling what you can, which is your response, how
Mhm.
you regulate in that moment, and then entering into uh, their difficulty or their own swirl with a steady presence is going to be the thing that allows them to really like take hold of that. I
Mhm.
would say like be a thermostat, not a thermometer, right? Like you set the tone, let your kid adjust to that
Mhm.
tone. Don't come in reacting to theirs, which, like you said earlier. So
Yeah, it's
that's
so hard. I
yeah.
mean, I think, especially in those moments, if our kids are disrespectful, they say something, they're like
Mhm.
rude to somebody else, and you're like, you want to stop that behavior right away.
Yeah.
Chances are, I mean, if your kid, I think kids do well when they can. I
Mhm.
don't think
Yes. Yeah.
they are intentionally being like, I want to cause a whole scene
Mhm.
around me. I mean, I think sometimes we
Mhm.
want attention and we ask for it in negative ways, but for the most part, we want to do well if we can.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, so, my son says something like unkind to his sister. And I'm like, okay, so what I hear you saying is you're upset with your sister. Can we try that a different way?
Mhm.
Right? Like, let's do a repeat, because if we're not practicing the
Mhm.
actual way, right? So it's like
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
understands you're upset with this thing.
Mhm.
So let's try it in a way. Okay. So he just said, please stop touching me. Okay. Did you hear that he asked you to please stop touching him?
Mhm.
Yes. Okay. So, are you guys going to separate? What's the plan? Right? How are you
Mhm.
going to honor the fact that he just
Yeah.
asked you to stop touching him? And I think oftentimes we are looking for a consequence that is going to just jolt that behavior out of them.
Mhm.
I hate to tell everybody this, but
Yeah.
there's not a consequence that is going to undo the behavior that's already been done. I mean,
Yes.
it is not going
Mhm.
to, it has already happened. So now what we have to do is get through it in a
Mhm.
way that is productive and helpful, so that the next time we face this challenge, we're equipped with better tools.
Yes.
Right. And
Oh,
I
so
think
good.
that is really hard, because I mean, I definitely grew up in a house where we had consequences, but
Mhm.
the consequences led me to feeling like I hated my parents for the thing that they did,
Mhm.
right? I got a spanking, or I lost a privilege or whatever. And I'm not saying that kids can't have natural consequences, like, hey, we're having a hard time regulating our emotions. This doesn't seem like the right time to go to a birthday party. I mean,
Mhm.
that might be an extreme one, because that's going to cause a lot of other
Mhm.
things. But I mean, there are times where we have to make decisions, or like we're going to have to be late, right?
Yeah.
So when we are calm and in control, then we can go.
Mhm.
Right? So
Yeah.
you dictate how long that takes to get yourself
Mhm.
back together, because the getting back together is way more important than the missing of the thing, because now
Absolutely.
you miss something too big, and then now they're mad at you. They don't think about their
Mhm.
behavior at all. There's
Yeah.
no reflection, because now you have upped it too much to
Mhm.
where they're reacting to your reaction. And so
Yeah.
then you're like, I'm going to level up. Like, that's what we're doing
Mhm.
here. Got it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yes.
I can go
Yes.
with you. And then you're like, okay, we're
Yeah.
leveling up. I can level up too. Right? And then it's
Oh,
like,
man.
it's like we had a small kitchen fire, and now the whole house is on fire. And you're like,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
just happened here?
Yes. Yep.
Right?
What happened?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And we don't like that. And I think we can say to our kids too, like, hey, this is where we're at. Like, this is the issue. And
Mhm.
somehow it got it to here. Let's go back, right? Rewind. And it's not like you can undo the things, but we can teach our kids how to talk through it, which I think
Mhm.
those are the way more important life skills.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
consequences, I mean, consequences are going to happen. There's legal
Mhm.
consequences to things, there's social consequences to things, there's
Mhm.
relational consequences to things. Those are very good tools, because we don't make them happen. They just
Mhm.
happen, right?
Yeah.
And so there's not
Mhm.
something that we can control. But I think it's, at our house, we're still working towards, like, not like, we grew up, both my husband and I, in houses where it's like you lost privileges, no dessert,
Mhm.
you can't
Yep.
do this, whatever. And neither of us felt better about it. But it's like
Yeah.
something we reactively will say
Mhm.
something, right? And then it's like, okay, hold on. Actually, let's try that differently. So I think we can
Mhm.
mimic this to our kids, because we get it wrong too, right? They're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
get it wrong. We get it
100%.
wrong. So
Yeah.
we can't expect them to be more perfect than we are,
Mhm. Yeah.
which I think sometimes we forget.
Yeah, I love that. We say that to our kids a lot. Like, it is okay to mess up in our house.
Hmm.
Like, you are not going to be perfect. I love how you said that, where you're, again, like, you're normalizing being a human being in your house and not setting an expectation that your kids are going to be perfect, or that feeling like big emotions is abnormal, right? Like, that's so much of what we want to teach our kids is, like, kind of how we started the conversation, the top of the podcast was like being able to understand how those different emotions show up in your body
Hmm.
and acknowledging them for what they are, and not allowing them to necessarily like rule and dictate everything around you, but
Hmm.
being able to say, hey, I'm really angry right now that my brother smashed my Lego ship, which, this was our conversation last night, so it's very
You're
fresh.
like, I think this
So
really happened.
yeah, yeah, it did. Yeah, less than 24 hours ago. And it, my son just, oh, he was so angry, so upset, punched his brother as a result of it. And so, it's like 20 minutes of just kind of unpacking why all this happened, and like,
Mhm.
hey, this is here's the way that we could have handled that better. And like being able to talk about that, like you said, and give them opportunities to practice it and
Yeah.
to try things differently, and to understand like, here's a healthy response to a normal emotion, and here's how what you did was like an unhealthy response to a still normal emotion. It's
Yes.
normal to be angry when your stuff breaks. I get
Absolutely.
angry when my
Yeah.
stuff breaks,
Mhm.
but I can't just go punching people because of that. Like,
Yeah.
here's some ways that you can, tools to your point,
Mhm.
that you can use to like calm down in those moments.
Mhm. Yeah, so it made me think of this analogy I talked to, like, especially teenagers about, but younger kids too, is like, okay, so my refrigerator is broken,
Hmm.
right? It's not working. I unplugged it, I plugged it back in. I can't figure this out because I have no refrigerator repair
Hmm.
skills. Okay. So I punch the refrigerator. How fixed is my refrigerator now?
Yeah.
And they're always like, none. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to punch it a couple more times and we're going to see how fixed the
Yeah.
refrigerator is. They're like, why would you punch it? You're going to break your
Yeah.
hand. And I'm like, I know, but it might fix it. And they're like, no, it's not going to fix it. And I'm like, okay, like anger is something that happens, but
Hmm.
acting out of anger, right? When
Hmm.
we react to it, doesn't
Yes.
actually fix the problem that we have. It
Hmm.
only amplifies it. Now we have another problem to take care of. Now I have a broken hand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I still have the broken refrigerator. Nothing changed. So
Hmm.
get mad and be like, ah, refrigerator, this is so frustrating that you're broken.
Hmm.
But I'm gonna call a repair person or I'm gonna buy a new one. Like,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna figure it out, but I'm
Yes.
not going to act in anger. And so I think,
Hmm.
it's like sometimes saying funny things to our kids, like, "Oh, are you gonna punch the refrigerator?" And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no,"
I
right?
like
Because
that
they
one.
know that doesn't work. And so
Yeah.
giving them, like, when you see they're going down that place, or I think to myself, am I about to punch the refrigerator? Right? Like,
Hmm.
am I going to act out of anger that is only going to cause me more problems? Yeah, I'm going to need some space, right? To walk away from this,
Yeah.
come back to it, or think, like when I can get my frontal lobe back online,
Yeah.
I can think with my rational brain and make a decision
Hmm.
about like what could actually solve this problem. Punching the
Yeah.
refrigerator is not going to be the thing.
No.
Right?
Yeah.
Yelling at my kids is not going to change their behavior. I mean, it may
Mhm,
out of fear, but it doesn't long
mhm.
term change their behavior.
Yeah, yeah,
So I've gotta
exactly.
do something else to elicit the response I would like.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so final question for you. What do you
Yeah.
and your wife do in terms of supporting each other to stay regulated?
Mhm.
Especially if you can tell somebody is, like, getting ready to punch the refrigerator.
Yeah. Oh, man. So this one, again, personally for me, and several dads that I've gone through some of my coaching have said the same thing, is that, there'll be moments where I can tell my wife is getting dysregulated, right? I'm coming down from, my work day. She's been with the kids all day, homeschooling and doing all that she does, and I can tell, like, it's just been a tough day. She's kinda at the end of her rope, and the kids are, bouncing off the walls or fighting or asking her for more, and I can tell it's, like, hitting a tipping point, and what I would so often do is just come in hot. I would come in at, like, a
Mhm.
10, trying to, like, just get everybody to be quiet and leave mom alone. And what it would do is like actually make it worse for her, because now she's got to step in and not only deal with the kids, but she's got to step in and like help me regulate, because
Mhm.
I'm like just coming in trying to bring everything down. And so, but it felt almost like an honorable thing. Like, I'm coming in to like
Mhm.
provide some relief. But in reality, she's like, actually, you're making me have to do a lot more, because like you can't, come in like that. And so being able to like assess and know where your spouse is in those moments, and being able to again come in from a place of regulation, and whether it's giving them space, right? Like that's one of my moves now is like I'll just come in, like quietly ask her to like separate herself if she just needs to go for a walk or go do whatever she needs to do to regulate, while I like take on the kids.
Mhm.
So like being able in that moment to understand what does the moment demand and how can I meet that demand for my spouse. And then the other piece would be like going back to the conversation we had earlier about finding like what are those proactive rhythms that you can implement on a
Yeah.
daily or weekly basis to be healthy, to be at your best, to take care of yourself. how can I fight for that space for her? So we still kind of do it now. It's gone through different iterations, but we call it sanctuary night. So usually on Thursdays, she goes out mid-afternoon. My oldest kind of watches the kids while I finish working, and then I do movie night and dinner with the kids. And my wife just kind of stays out, goes thrift shopping, goes to the library, goes and reads a book somewhere, does whatever she wants to do, just has a few hours out and away. She picks up burritos for us and comes home after I got the kids in bed, and we do like day night in afterwards.
Love
And it's
it.
just like, that's the rhythm that we found that really works for her and works for me and works for our family. And so
Yeah.
like, I know that even when I've had a really long day of work on Thursday, and I would much rather not do a solo night of dinner and bedtime, like I know that space is crucial for her to be at her best, to regulate not only in that moment, but like
Mhm.
for the remainder of the week. And so it's an easy yes, it's an easy thing to fight for her, and she, does the same thing for me, so I can go to coffee shop on the weekend. So
Yeah.
being able to like support one another in those needs, communicate them very
Mhm.
openly, and like set the expectations and agree on those expectations for what is going to work for each of you and in your family is such an important thing to have.
Yeah. That's so helpful. Thank you, Tyler, for all of this.
Yeah.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks again, Tyler. That was all such helpful information. I feel like there's a lot of things that you've said that really resonate with me, and I hope that they're resonating with you too. I will say thank you so much for your time. Thanks for showing up to find out ways to manage your frustration with your kids better. If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and subscribe to our show on whatever platform you use to subscribe. Go ahead and also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and keep the emails coming with future topic suggestions to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have an amazing day.
Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.